लेट्स टॉक अबाउट दी ऑडिसी। मूवी में पता नहीं कितना चीज माइथोलॉजी के हिसाब से डाला हो, क्योंकि सिनेमैटिक लिबर्टी तो सभी लेते हैं, नोलन साहब भी लेंगे और कुछ ना कुछ चेंज करेंगे। इस क्रोनोलॉजिकली हम समझ लेते हैं जरा कि क्या क्या हुआ था ऑडिसी में। स्पॉयलर्स अहेड गाइस। द ऑडिसी वाज रिटन बाय होमर, अ ब्लाइंड पोएट विद अनलिमिटेड imagination. His two works are his legacy, the Iliad and the Odyssey. These two major ancient epic poems are attributed by Homer. It is one of the oldest extant works of literature, still widely read by modern audiences. Let's talk about what happened बिफोर द ऑडिसी। वो मतलब ऑडिसी के पहले भी जाना क्योंकि जरूरी है, क्योंकि ऑडिसी इस बीच में का स्टोरी, थोड़ा पहले का भी देखना पड़ेगा अपने को। द स्टोरी ऑफ ऑडिसी बिगेन्स आफ्टर द ट्रोजन वॉर। ट्रोजन वॉर वाज अ 10-year long war between the Greeks and the city of Troy, मतलब Trojans. The war ended when Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, came up with the idea of the Trojan horse. The Greek soldier hid inside a wooden horse, brought it inside the city, and that night Troy was destroyed. After Troy fell, all Greek heroes started returning home. This journey back home is called Nostos, meaning return. And comment down below if you want me to make video on Iliad, क्योंकि ये भी बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग रीड था। मुझे तो बहुत ही मजा आया, बहुत ही मजेदार था। अगर आपको इसके ऊपर भी वीडियो चाहिए तो कमेंट में डालो। Odysseus और Ulysses is the king of Ithaca. He is famous not for his strength like Achilles. He was known as Odysseus the Cunning, a man famous for his intelligence and clever tricks. The Greeks often called him the man of the many turns. The goal is simple: to return home to Ithaca to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. Before leaving Troy, Odysseus angers the god Poseidon. Poseidon curses Odysseus. The curse turns a short sea journey into a 10-year nightmare. The Odyssey does not start at the beginning of the journey. It begins in the middle of the story, a technique called medias res. Let's start the journey because it's a long one. I'll try to cover each and every incident, but if I miss a few, let me know in the comments. कोई भी information गलत हो तो भी नीचे बता सकते हो। Thank you so much. After the 10 years of war in Troy and retrieving the Spartan queen Helen, Odysseus and his crew of 600 men start their journey in 12 ships. Troy was a battlefield, तो यहाँ से कैसे कैसे करके वहाँ से निकलते हैं in search of some supplies. They land on the shores of Isamar, Sikonis का hometown. The story of Odysseus and the Sikonis is a crucial moment that sets the tone for the challenge to come. I think Homer's Odyssey follows a void similar in structure to One Piece, but driven by loss, punishment and survival rather than adventure and joy. Is it just me? And as I was reading, Odyssey reminded me of Brooks' backstory. बैक टू स्टोरी। ओडिसियस एंड क्रू इसामारुस में घुसते हैं। पोस्ट वॉर एड्रेनलिन रश रहता है, तो वहाँ भी लड़ाइयाँ कर रहे हैं, सब सिकोनीस को मार रहे हैं, लूट रहे हैं। दे टेक देयर वाइफ्स एंड लोकल वुमेन, बट ड्यूरिंग ऑल दिस ओडिशियस को मिलता है एक भगवान का आदमी जिसका नाम मरून होता है। ही इज द प्रीस्ट ऑफ अपोलो, सिंपली अंडरस्टैंडिंग द ग्रेव डेंजर ऑफ हार्मिंग अ गॉड्स डेडिकेटेड सर्वेंट। ओडिशियस ensured that Maroon and his immediate wife were kept safe from the fighting and looting. Maroon being grateful for the help he presents Odysseus with truly exceptional gifts. 7 talents of gold. Talent मतलब talent कितना होता है पता है तुमको? 26 किलो का एक talent होता है. And most importantly 12 jars filled with a specific wine. It was incredibly potent, sweet and pure, and usually mixed with 20-part water before being served. Maroon entrusted this secret powerful vintage to Odysseus. After defeating the city of Isamarus, Odysseus immediately warned his men to leave at once. He knew that staying in the captured city was dangerous and that Sikonis would regroup, but his crew did not listen. Feeling confident and greedy after victory, the men stayed behind. Odysseus tried to restrain them, but his warnings were ignored. While the Greeks were feasting, surviving Sikonis escaped inland. They gathered a much larger and stronger force. At dawn the next day, the Sikonis launched a powerful counter-attack. They attacked in great numbers and caught the Greeks by surprise near their ships. A fierce battle followed, lasted until late afternoon. Although Odysseus and his men fought bravely, they were eventually overwhelmed. As the sun began to set, Odysseus ordered a retreat. The surviving men fled back to ships and escaped to sea, but 6 men from each ship were killed. This means that 72 of Odysseus' companions were killed. Odysseus and surviving could not do anything but mourn their fallen comrades. Homer notes that Odysseus ordered the ship to pause offshore, and there they called out the names of the dead 3 times, a traditional farewell to honor fallen heroes. By the way, this whole journey was basically his crew not listening to him and resulting in devastating death tolls. भाई मतलब सुन लो भाई, कैप्टन की सुन लिया। After being driven off course by violent storms for For 9 days, Odysseus and his exhausted crew finally reached a calm and peaceful shore. The land felt safe and welcoming. This place was the land of the Lotus Eaters. As a cautious leader, Odysseus sent a small scouting party of 3 men. 2 were warriors and 1 was a herald to speak and observe. Odysseus wanted to understand the people and the land before risking his entire crew. चालाक तो है बड़ा लौंडा. The scouts soon met the Lotus Eaters. They were gentle and showed no hostility. They offered the men the lotus fruit, a sweet plant with magical power. Anyone who ate it fell into a state of blissful forgetfulness. LSD था वो, मतलब basically. After tasting the lotus, the scouts forgot their desire to return home. They no longer cared for Ithaca, their families or their mission. कुछ नहीं याद था. They wanted only to stay peaceful and content, lost in the present moment. When the scouts did not return, Odysseus sensed danger. He went ashore himself and found his men under the spell of the lotus. Acting quickly, he dragged them back to the ships by force, even when they resisted and begged to stay. He understood that comfort and forgetfulness were just as dangerous as monsters, knowing that even a short delay could trap them forever. Strong leadership saved them from losing their purpose completely. अभी आते हैं सबसे interesting part journey के. The journey was rough and supplies were low. They had to stop for the same, and suddenly they see a shore in the distance. It was a land of Cyclops, and Cyclops are basically one-eyed giants known for their lack of civilization and disregard for the Greek customs of hospitality और Xenia. They are usually shepherds. Odysseus अपना एंकर लगा के अपने 12 बागड़ बिल्लों को लेके जाता है, thinking land will have a friendly vibe. तो भाई साहब स्पेशल वाइन जो है मरून ने दिया हुआ वो भी लेके चल देते हैं. हमारे से मिली थी ना वो. They see a cave and they enter it. Little did they know what they were getting into. Inside, they find plenty of cheese, milk and lambs. Some of the crew urges Odysseus to take supplies and leave, but Odysseus chooses to wait, expecting proper hospitality. It was the cave of Polyphemus. When Polyphemus returned, he sealed the cave with a massive stone. Odysseus begged for hospitality in the name of Zeus, but Polyphemus mocked the gods and declared that Cyclops feared no one. He killed and ate 2 men on the spot. Yeah, this is Returns rated A. That night and the next morning, Polyphemus ate 4 more men. Odysseus considered killing him but realized that without the Cyclops, they could never move the stone blocking the cave. He needed a smarter plan. Odysseus offered Polyphemus a powerful wine given to him by Maron, a priest of Apollo. याद है वो वाला? The wine was so strong it was normally mixed with water, but Odysseus gave it undiluted. Polyphemus drank heavily, पूरा नीट मार गया, became drunk. थोड़ी बहुत बातचीत करने लग गया, दोस्त बन गया. Odysseus इतनी बातचीत में उसने उसका नाम पूछा तो Odysseus ने उसका नाम उसको बोला. He is nobody. Polyphemus promised that nobody would be eaten last and then fell into the deep sleep. While Polyphemus slept, Odysseus and his men heated a sharpened olive wood stick and drove it into his single eye, blinding him. Polyphemus screamed in pain. Other Cyclops rushed over and asked what was wrong. Polyphemus cried and said, "Nobody is killing me." Thinking he was mad or cursed by the gods, they left him alone. By kya pagal ho gaya, nobody is killing me. The next morning, the blind Polyphemus let his sheep out, feeling the backs of the sheep to stop any men from escaping. Odysseus bhi chalak hai. Odysseus had tied his men under the bellies of the sheep and he himself clung to a large ram. Polyphemus felt only wool upar and Greeks escaped by. Once safely at sea, वो दूर चले गए. Odysseus में पता नहीं boast करने का मन किया and revealed his real name. He said, "If any mortal man ever asked who it was that had inflicted upon you by this blinding shame, tell him that was Odysseus, sacker of cities who lives in Ithaca." ये टोनी स्टार्क मूव लगाने की कोई जरूरत नहीं, तुम पे तो हजारों साल कहानियां बनने वाली है. This moment of pride proved fatal. Polyphemus hurled huge rocks at the ship and then prayed to his father Poseidon, asking that Odysseus never reach home. He shouted, "Hear me, Poseidon, Earthshaker. If I am truly your son, grant that Odysseus, sacker of the cities, may never reach his home. Or if he must return, he must come late in misery, having lost his all companions in stranger ship and trouble at home." इतना लेवल में जो श्राप दिए ना भाई, मजा आ गया. This curse becomes the reason for Odysseus' long and painful journey. After escaping the Cyclops, Odysseus and his crew reached Aeolia, the floating island of Aeolus, the mortal king appointed by Zeus as the keeper of the winds. Aeolus welcomed Odysseus warmly and hosted him for an entire month, listening to his stories of the Trojan War and his long journey. When Odysseus was ready to leave, Aeolus gave him a powerful gift again. He sealed all the dangerous storm winds inside a bag made of ox hide, tied shut with a silver cord. Only one wind was left free, the west wind, to blow the ship safely towards Ithaca. For 9 days the voyager was calm and smooth. On the 10th day, Ithaca was clearly visible. अभी दिख ही गया, आपने को दिख रहा है आंख से. Completely exhausted, Odysseus ने अपनी आंख बंद की और सो गया वो. While he slept, the crew grew suspicious, believing the bag held gold and silver. They opened it out of greed. The trapped wind exploded outwards, creating a violent storm that drove the ships back across the sea to Aeolia. When Odysseus begged Aeolus for help again, Aeolus refused. He believed Odysseus must be hated by the gods and did not dare help someone under divine punishment. Enraged, he drove Odysseus and his crew away. With no help left, Odysseus and his men rode away in despair. Their return to Ithaca delayed once again by the crew's disobedience. After leaving Aeolia, Odysseus and his fleet were forced to row for days without wind. 6 days later, exhausted, they reached a strange land called Lemos, home to the Lestrogians. Homer describes this land as unnatural, where day and night almost overlap. Shepherds returning at dusk met others heading out at dawn, suggesting a place that never truly slept. Oh, that land must be called Mumbai. This eerie detail hinted that the land was not normal. The fleet discovered a deep harbor surrounded by the steep cliffs with only a narrow entrance. It looked safe, so 11 ships sailed inside and anchored close together. Odysseus, however, acted cautiously. He kept his own ship outside the harbor, tying it to a rock. He climbed at the high point to survey the land to notice there was no farm, no ox. Something felt wrong. Odysseus sent 3 scouts, 2 men and a herald, same again. Following a road, they reached a spring where they met a young woman drawing water. She was the daughter of King Antiphates and directed them to her father's house. Inside, they first encountered Antiphates' wife, a gigantic woman whose size terrified them. She called for her husband, King Antiphates, who arrived immediately. Any hope for Xenia, Greek hospitality vanished. Antiphates seized one scout, killed him instantly, and prepared to eat him, revealing that these are the cannibal giants. The remaining 2 scouts escaped and ran back towards the ship. Antiphates raised a loud cry, summoning his people. Thousands of Lestrogian giants gathered among the cities, hurled massive rocks onto the trapped ships below. Vessels were smashed and sunk almost instantly. The giants then speared the sailors like fish, dragging them ashore to be eaten. It was a swift and total massacre. Nearly the entire fleet was destroyed. From outside the harbor, Odysseus watched his men die. Realizing there was no chance to fight, he cut his ship's rope with his sword and ordered his crew to row with all their strength. His ship fled away into the open sea. Behind them lay only wreckage, death and silence. पूरा fleet खत्म हो गया बंदे का. After their escape from the cannibalistic Lestrogians, Odysseus and his shattered fleet reached the mythical island of Aeia, which sounds like Tushar Kapoor named this island. Only one ship remained. The ship greeted them with an unsettling silence, broken occasionally by strange distinct sounds drifting from somewhere inland. To investigate, Odysseus sent out a scouting party, again led by Eurylochus. Deep within the dense forest, they discovered a magnificent palace surrounded by lions and wolves. Yet, this beast behaved unnaturally, wagging their tail. They were like domesticated animals, all were pets. It was beautiful but deeply wrong. From inside the palace came the sound of a woman singing, enchanting and impossible to ignore. Circe, the goddess of sorcery, emerged and warmly invited the men inside. Trusting hospitality, the scouts entered except Eurylochus, whose instincts warned him to stay back. The welcome was a lie. Circe offered the men a drink laced with a powerful potion. With a strike of a wand, she transformed them into swines and drove them into pixies, their minds still human, trapped inside animal bodies. Only Eurylochus escaped and ran back to Odysseus and told him about the horrifying truth. This moment perfectly reflects one of the Odyssey's core theme: deceptive appearance and corrupted Xenia. that seems generous and welcoming can mask moral danger. Determined to save his men, Odysseus set out alone towards Circe's palace. On the way, the god Hermes appeared. Acting as divine messenger and protector, he warned Odysseus of Circe's magic and gave him a sacred herb called moly. नहीं वो मॉली नहीं, capable of nullifying her enchantments. Hermes also laid out a precise strategy: drink Circe's potion without fear, resist her spell, and threaten her with force. That's it, simple. This intervention highlights Odysseus' unique status among mortals: clever but still reliant on divine aid. When Circe offered Odysseus her potion, he drank it calmly. The magic failed. Shocked, Circe struck him in the wand, but nothing happened. Following Hermes' instructions, Odysseus drew his sword and threatened her life. For the first time, Circe was powerless. She begged for mercy. Odysseus agreed on one condition. Circe had to swear on a Stygian oath, the most binding vow in the divine world, promising never to harm him or his crew again. Even gods could not break such an oath. Bound by her word, Circe restored the crew to human form, stronger and even younger than before. मेरे को भी दे दो यार upgrade. What followed was not escape, but delay. Odysseus and his men remained on Aia for an entire year, indulging in endless feasts, wine and comfort. मस्त party हो रही है उधर. Circe's palace overflowed with luxury. After endless suffering, this felt like paradise. Odysseus also became Circe's lover, complicating his mission and testing his resolve. The year-long stay raises an important question: was the genuine hospitality, or this is just a subtler form of captivity? Aia represents a dangerous temptation, the comfort that makes a hero forget his purpose. Eventually, the crew reminded Odysseus of Nostos, the sacred duty of returning home. Stirred by the pleas, he never prepared to leave. Circe, now transformed from enemy to ally, offered crucial guidance. She revealed that Odysseus could not reach Ithaca without first descending into the underworld to consult the blind prophet Tiresias, the only one who knew his fate. She explained the rituals required to summon the dead, proving her mastery over the boundaries between worlds. Before the departure, tragedy struck again. Elphenor, the youngest of the crew, fell from the palace roof and died, an abrupt reminder of how fragile life could be even in the presence of gods. Circe continued to aid Odysseus even after his return from the underworld, warning him with the sirens and providing favorable winds. Her evolution from hostile enchantress to protector to guide captures the complex nature of divine relationships in Greek mythology. Circe is neither purely evil nor hero. Following Circe's precise instruction, Odysseus sails to the very edge of the known world, a place perpetually shrouded in mist and darkness, untouched by the sun. The geographical extremity reinforces the idea that the underworld exists beyond normal human experience. Here flows the two rivers, traditional boundaries separating the living from the dead. Odysseus does not walk through the gates or descend into a cavern. Instead, he reaches the underworld through the ritual and transgression, standing at the liminal point where worlds overlap. Odysseus performs a ritual sacrifice. He digs a pit and pours libations of milk, honey and wine and water, followed by the blood of a black ram and an Evie. Only after drinking the blood can the shades regain consciousness and speech. This movement reflects ancient Greek beliefs about death. Odysseus' encounters is bleak and joyless. It is not a place of fiery punishment but of endless shadow. The dead exist as faint images of who they once were, stripped of physical form and vitality. Even great heroes are reduced to murmuring shade. This vision reflects a distinctly Homeric understanding of death. Glory in life does not guarantee fulfillment in death. The separation of body and soul is absolute, and existence without the body is profoundly diminished. The heart of the Nekyua lies in the Odysseus encounters with the dead. The first shade Odysseus encounters is Elphenor, jo chhat se ignobly falling from Circe's roof while drunk, and his body remains unburied. Though unable to cross fully into the underworld, Elphenor begs Odysseus to return and perform proper funeral rites. This encounter highlights that sacred importance of burial in Greek culture. Without the ritual care of the body, the soul cannot rest. It also reminds Odysseus and the audience and that even heroes are vulnerable to meaningless death. The most important encounter is Tiresias. Unlike other shades, Tiresias retains all consciousness and prophetic powers even in death, a unique blessing given by Persephone. Tiresias revealed the path ahead. He warns Odysseus of Poseidon's continued hostility. He instructs him to leave the cattle of Helios unharmed and foretells the violence awaiting him in Ithaca at the hands of the suitors. Everything now that follows unfolds according to Tiresias' words. As you can see, he has been given a lot of guidance, a lot of reward from gods. That's why he could do this nightmarish journey which is called Odyssey. Odysseus' meeting with his mother is among the most emotionally devastating moments in the epic. He learns that she died not from violence or illness but from grief during his long absence. Odysseus tries 3 times to embrace her and 3 times she slips through his arms. The moment captures the cruelty of death and reinforces the theme of Nostos, not merely as a physical return but as a moral obligation to those who left behind. Odysseus also encounters heroes from Troy, allowing the epic to reflect on war's aftermath. Achilles, once the embodiment of heroic glory, delivers the most striking reversal of values in the epic. He tells Odysseus that we would rather be a living servant to a poor man than to king of all the dead. यहाँ पे अपने को समझ में आता है कि glory in hindsight is meaningless compared to life itself. This moment fundamentally challenges the heroic code that defined Achilles in the Iliad. Odysseus leaves the underworld not empowered but sobered. He gains no weapon, no magical aid, only knowledge, warning and perspective. The Nekyia is the emotional and philosophical core of the Odyssey. It confronts the hero with mortality, loss and the true cost of fame. After seeing the dead, Odysseus truly understands what truly matters. Not glory, but survival, restraint and the long road home. Journey onward, Odysseus faces many dangers, including the Sirens, deadly creature often shown as part women and part bird. The Sirens use their beautiful singing to lure sailors towards the island. Enchanted by the music, ships would crash against the rocks and the sailors would die. Forewarned by Circe, Odysseus devised a careful plan. He ordered his crew to plug his ears with beeswax so they would not hear the siren song. Odysseus alone wished to listen. To protect himself, he commanded his men to tie himself tightly on the ship's mast and to ignore his cries no matter how desperately he begged to be released. As the ship passed the Sirens' island, Odysseus heard their song. It promised wisdom, love, sweeter than honey, an end to sorrow and peace. Overcome by desire, he struggled against the ropes and begged to be freed, but his crew obeyed his orders and rowed on without stopping. Because of their discipline and Odysseus' foresight, the ship passed safely beyond the Sirens' reach. In some version of the myth, it is said that if sailors heard the siren song and escaped, the Sirens were fated to die. After Odysseus' ship passed, they threw themselves into the sea. In Ithaca, many noblemen called the suitors moved into Odysseus' palace. They eat his food, waste his wealth, and force Penelope to choose a new husband. She promises to choose a husband after finishing a burial cloth, but secretly undoes her work every night. Meanwhile, Odysseus' son Telemachus grows up without his father and begins searching for news about him. उसका अलग adventure है, उसके बारे में बात करेंगे बाद में दूसरे वीडियो में. After returning from the underworld, Odysseus and his crew once again reach Circe's island. She takes Odysseus aside and warns him that the most dangerous part of the journey is still ahead. इतना झेलने के बाद भी बोल रही है कि भाई dangerous part तो अभी बाकी है. That's how they escape Sirens from Circe's advice. Beyond the Sirens, Circe explained that there are 2 possible routes. One rock leads to the clashing rocks. These rocks smash together and destroy every ship that tries to pass. The second route is a narrow strait guarded by 2 monsters. This is the path Odysseus must take. On one side of the strait lives Scylla, hidden high inside a cave carved into a sheer cliff. Circe describes her voice as sounding like a newborn puppy, cruel contrast of a true form. मैं बोला One Piece जैसा ही है. Scylla has 12 twisted feet and 6 long necks, each ending in a terrifying head. Every mouth holds 3 rows of sharp teeth. From her cave, she lunges outside and snatches sailors from passing ships. Circe warns Odysseus that Scylla cannot be fought. She is immortal, savage, and unstoppable. Even the gods avoid her. On the opposite side lurks Charybdis, beneath a lower rock marked by a great fig tree. Circe does not consider her shape but only her action. 3 times a day, Charybdis sucks the sea down into a massive whirlpool, exposing the seabed. She violently splits the water back out. Any ship caught while she draws the sea inwards is completely destroyed. Circe warns that not even Poseidon could save a ship once it is caught. Odysseus asks if is there any way to not fight any of those. Circe rebuks him sharply. She tells him that Scylla is not mortal and cannot be defeated. Any delay, even putting on armor, will allow her to strike again. Her final instruction is grim but clear. Odysseus must steer clear close to Scylla's cliff and race past. Circe said it is better to mourn 6 men than to lose the whole ship and everyone on it. The ship is not between safety and danger but between partial loss and total destruction. At dawn, Odysseus and his crew sail from Aia. He follows Circe's advice about the sirens, sealing his men's ears with beeswax and binding him to the mast. However, it does not tell his crew about Scylla and Charybdis. He fears that terror would make them freeze, drop their oars and doom the ship. As they enter the strait, the roar of Charybdis fills the air. The sea churns violently, the men panic. Odysseus moves among them, urging them and reminding them how they survived the Cyclops. Their fear is focused entirely on the whirlpool. Just as Circe predicted, Scylla attacks from the opposite side. Her 6 heads shoot down from the cliff. In seconds, she snatches 6 of Odysseus' strongest men, the best rowers, straight from the deck. Odysseus hears them scream his name as they are lifted into the air. Homer describes their body dangling helplessly. Before Scylla devours them at the mouth of her cave, he compares them to small fish caught on a long line. Odysseus later says this was the most painful sight to be witnessed during all his travels. The ship escapes the strait. Charybdis does not swallow them. Scylla does not strike again. They survive. But survival comes at a terrible cost. Odysseus alone knew what would happen. His choice, guided by Circe and the gods, saved the ship but doomed 6 men without warning. This moment reveals the true burden of leadership in the Odyssey. Sometimes survival demands silence, sacrifice and choices that haunt the one who makes them. The danger of Thrinacia is already unmistakable. Circe explicitly warns Odysseus about Helios' sacred livestock, 7 herds of cattle and 7 flocks of sheep, 50 in each, tended by the daughters of sun god. These animals are immortal, neither reproducing nor dying, and therefore completely untouchable. Circe's instruction is absolute. If the cattle are left unharmed, Odysseus may yet reach Ithaca. If they are harmed, total destruction would follow. Thrinacia delivers the same prophecy. The reputation from both prophet and goddess confirms that is not a test of strength or cleverness, but of restraint. After surviving Scylla and Charybdis, the crew reaches Thrinacia utterly exhausted. The men beg to land. Odysseus agrees only after forcing them to swear an oath not to touch Helios' cattle or sheep. What should have been a brief stop turns into a month-long imprisonment. Unfavorable wind holds them fast. Supplies from Circe ran out. Hunger becomes constant. Odysseus urges fishing, repeatedly reminding them of their oath, but the sacred herds remain in plain sight, healthy and abundant. Hunger erodes discipline. Eurylochus breaks the oath. At last, Eurylochus speaks. He argues that all deaths are hateful, but starvation is like the worst. He proposes killing the finest cattle as a sacrifice, promising that they will build a grand temple to Helios once they reach Ithaca. If Helios destroys them at sea, he claims a swift death is better than wasting away on land. The argument succeeds. Crucially, Odysseus is absent. He has gone inland to pray for divine help, and while he prays, the god places him into a deep sleep. In his absence, the oath is broken and the sacred cattle are slaughtered. Her daughter reports the crime to Helios, who immediately confronts Zeus and the Olympians. His demand is uncompromising. If justice is denied, he will abandon the sky and shine among the dead, plunging the world of the living into darkness. कुछ भी करने का Helios का ego hurt नहीं करने का. सब Greek god ऐसा दौड़ दौड़ के Zeus के पास क्यों चले जाते? The threat is cosmic. The god gods have already passed judgment. After 6 days, the winds finally change and the ship sets sail. Once at sea, Zeus unleashes a storm, a thunderbolt smashes the ship, the mast shatters and kills the helmsman. The vessel breaks apart and every man is thrown into the sea and drowned. The prophecy is fulfilled completely now. Odysseus survives only because fate demands it. Clinging to the broken mast and keel, he is cast adrift, stripped of crew, ship and hope. The punishment has ended his voyage by sea. He is now truly alone. No monsters, no god and no trick destroys Odysseus' crew. Hunger does. After Thrinacia, Odysseus was the only survivor. Using the wreckage of his destroyed ship, he built a rough raft and drifted across the sea for 9 agonizing days. Beaten by waves, hunger and exhaustion, he struggled to stay alive. On the 10th day, fate carried him on the island of Ogygia. This disaster marked the final loss of his crew and ship. On Ogygia, the nymph Calypso found the shipwrecked hero. She rescued him from death and cared for his wounds, bringing him into her home. At first, this was an act of mercy, but it soon became something more complicated. Calypso felt deeply in love with Odysseus. What began as rescue slowly turned into a captivity. यार Odysseus में कुछ तो था भाई, सबके सब लट्टू हो जा रहे हैं. She offered him comfort, luxury and something no mortal could refuse: immortality. If Odysseus stayed with her as her husband, he would never age, never suffer and never die. For 7 long years, Odysseus lived on the island. There were no chains holding him, only temptation. Yet despite the beauty of Ogygia and Calypso's love, Odysseus remained restless, staring out of the sea, weeping for his home. His heart longed for Ithaca, for his wife Penelope, and for the life he had left behind. Odysseus' captivity ended not through his own strength, but through divine intervention. Athena, his protector, grew concerned over his long absence. She appealed to Zeus, reminding him that Odysseus had suffered enough. Zeus agreed and sent Hermes, the messenger god, to Ogygia with a direct command. Calypso was ordered to release Odysseus. When Hermes delivered the message, Calypso reacted with anger and sorrow. She accused of Olympian gods of hypocrisy. Male gods, she argued, freely loved mortal women without punishment, while goddesses were condemned for loving mortal men. She pointed to Eos and Orion. Despite her protests, Calypso knew that she could not defy Zeus. In a final act of love and dignity, she helped Odysseus leave. She provided tools, supplies and guidance and helped him prepare a sail. In 4 days, Odysseus built a strong raft. On the 5th day, he set sail. Calypso gave him navigation advice, instructing him to keep the Great Bear constellation on his left as he sailed towards Ithaca. She ensured that he had the best chance to survive. Her island marked both a prison and a turning point, ending his isolation and setting him back to the path towards home. After leaving Calypso's island, Odysseus once again faced the anger of Poseidon. Furious that the other gods had allowed Odysseus to sail home, the sea god unleashed a violent storm. Waves shattered the raft and hurled Odysseus into the open sea. For days he clung to broken pieces of wood. Battered and exhausted, near death, he was finally carried by the waves to shore. He had reached Scaria, the land of Phaeacians. Completely spent, Odysseus crawled inland and collapsed inside a thick groove near the coast. There he fell into a deep and desperate sleep. Athena once again intervened in a dream to Nausicaa, the daughter of king, rulers of Scaria. Disguised as a friend, Athena urged her to go to the river with her maids to wash clothes. The next morning, Nausicaa and her attendants arrived at the river near the Odysseus slept. After finishing their work, they began playing and laughing. The noise woke Odysseus. Startled and desperate, he stepped out from the bushes, his body covered only by a leafy branch and bruised and crusted with salt from the sea. The maids fled in fear. Nausicaa alone stood her ground. Odysseus quickly understood the situation. Instead of rushing towards her, he kept his distance and spoke carefully. He asked only for clothing, food, and directions to a city. Moved by his words and impressed by his restraint, Nausicaa showed compassion. She ordered her maids to return and help the stranger. They gave Odysseus food, oil, and clean clothes. Athena then enhanced his appearance, making him taller, stronger, and more kingly, ensuring he would leave a powerful impression. She instructed Odysseus to follow her group at the distance so no one would understand their meeting. She told him to wait in the sacred grove outside the city and then make his way alone to the palace. Nausicaa explained that her mother held great influence and that gaining her favor was the surest path to help. Scaria is unlike any land Odysseus has ever seen. Homer describes it as distant distant and almost untouched by the rest of the world. The Phaeacians live close to the gods and are descended from Poseidon himself. Their society is peaceful, prosperous, and highly civilized. They value feasting, music, athletic games, dance, and storytelling. Their ships are legendary, able to cross the sea swiftly without rudders. Guided by thought alone, despite an old prophecy warning against aiding strangers, the Phoenicians uphold the sacred law of Xenia, the duty to welcome and protect guests. Guided by Athena, who cloaked him in mist, Odysseus entered the city unseen and reached the palace safely. When the mist faded, he approached king and queen and grabbed his knees begging for mercy and help. They welcomed him immediately, offered him food and drink. Odysseus answered carefully, protecting Nausicaa from gossip. King was so impressed by that he briefly considered offering Odysseus his daughter in marriage, though Odysseus made it clear that his only desire was to return home. They celebrated their guest with feast and athletic contests. When a young noble mocked Odysseus' strength, Odysseus responded by throwing a discus farther than any man before him, proving his heroic power. During the feast, the blind bardic Demodocus sang of the Trojan War, including tales of Odysseus himself. Overcome with emotions, Odysseus wept. King noticed and gently urged him to reveal his identity. Odysseus finally spoke his name. He declared himself Odysseus, king of Ithaca. He then told the full story of his wanderings since Troy. He spoke of the Lotus Eaters, Polyphemus, Cyclops, Circe, the journey to the underworld, the Sirens, and his long captivity under Calypso. The Phoenicians listened in silence and awe. At last, Odysseus had reached a place where his suffering was believed, his endurance honored, and his journey towards home could truly begin. Moved by Odysseus' endurance and impressed by his tale, king and the nobles agreed to carry him home. They prepared one of their legendary ships and loaded it with gifts of great value, riches greater than anything Odysseus had gained at Troy. The ship was crewed by the finest sailors, famous for their unmatched skill. Their vessels required no rudder or navigator, responding instead to the thought of those aboard. Worn down by years of suffering and the emotional weight of telling his story, Odysseus soon fell into a deep sleep after departure. While he slept, the ship crossed the sea with astonishing speed, reaching Ithaca before dawn. Without waking him, they laid him gently on the sand beneath a sacred olive tree and placed his treasure beside him. Without disturbing the land, they returned to their ships. They sailed back towards their home. Odysseus awoke alone. Though he stood on his native soil, he failed to recognize it at first. Athena had hidden Ithaca beneath a veil of mist, both to protect him and to prepare him for what lay ahead. And disguised at first, Athena appeared and spoke with him. Only after revealing herself did she lift the mist, allowing Odysseus to see Ithaca clearly at last. He had finally returned home, but peace still lay beyond reach. Danger and disorder awaited him in his own palace, and his final trial was about to begin. The Phoenicians generously did not go unnoticed by Poseidon, and raged that they had carried his enemy home so easily. The sea god complained to Zeus. He argued that his authority was being undermined and demanded punishment. Zeus did not fully share Poseidon's anger, but he allowed him to defend his honor. As the ship approached Sicaria's harbor, Poseidon struck. He transformed the vessel and its crew into stone, fixing it forever to the seabed just ashore. This act fulfilled an ancient prophecy that warned the Phoenicians their kindness to strangers would one day bring ruin. Their age of effortless seafaring come to an end. When Odysseus awoke, he was alone. He had returned home after 20 years. Athena warned Odysseus that his palace was overrun by suitors who believed him dead. These men had abused the laws of hospitality, consumed his wealth, and pressurized Penelope to choose a new husband. Worse still, they had to begin plotting to kill his son Telemachus. To survive, Odysseus could not reveal himself yet. Athena transformed him into an old beggar. This disguise allowed Odysseus to move freely. He first sought shelter with Eumaeus, his swineherd. Despite his appearance, Eumaeus showed kindness and unwavering loyalty to his absent king. This loyalty, showed without knowing the truth, moved Odysseus deeply. Athena then brought Telemachus safely back from his journey abroad. In a private moment, she revealed Odysseus' identity to his son. Father and son were reunited in secret, and together they planned the destruction of the suitors. Still disguised, Odysseus entered his own palace. There he endured mockery, insults, and physical abuse from the suitors. He escaped this humiliation silently, measuring their cruelty and arrogance. Only his old dog Argus recognized him. After 20 years of waiting, Argus lifted his head, waggled his tail, and died peacefully. Penelope, cautious and intelligent, spoke with the beggar, sensing something unusual about him. Yet she remained unsure, bound by grief, hope, and suspicion. Unable to endure the suitors any longer, Penelope announced a contest. She would marry whoever could string Odysseus' great bow, shooting through 12 axe heads, a feat that only Odysseus himself had ever achieved. One by one, the suitors failed. They could not even bend the bow. When the beggar asked for a chance, the suitors laughed. But Telemachus insisted. Odysseus took the bow and strung it effortlessly. He fired the arrow straight through 12 axes. The movement was unmistakable. Odysseus revealed himself. The palace became a battlefield. With Telemachus, Eumaeus, and a few loyal servants, Odysseus slaughtered the suitors. Athena stood behind him, ensuring victory and restoring balance. Penelope, still cautious, tested Odysseus one final time by speaking of their immovable bed, carved from a living olive tree. Odysseus' reaction proved his identity beyond doubt. Husband and wife were united at last. The families of the slain suitors sought revenge, threatening to plunge Ithaca into civil war. Before blood could be spilled again, Athena intervened one final time. By Zeus' command, she imposed peace upon both sides. Odysseus was restored as king. The Odyssey closes not with glory, but with order restored, loyalty rewarded, and a man reclaimed by his home. So this was the Odyssey by Homer. And now I don't know how much of this story is going to be adapted by Nolan ka movie Odyssey. Alright, that's the video. Please like the video if you like the video, and please subscribe. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.